Well, in the U.S., it was another day, another setback for Donald Trump and his drive for absolute presidential power. In the latest sign of trouble, the Senate narrowly approved a so-called war powers resolution that would require Donald Trump to seek congressional authorization before continuing military operations against Iran. That measure passed 50-48 with bipartisan support as 4 Republicans broke ranks to vote in favor. Now, that resolution is non-binding. It means it doesn't carry the force of law and is unlikely to trigger an immediate policy shift. But even so, the Republican defections are being viewed as a notable rebuke to Trump, who has maintained a firm grip on most GOP lawmakers so far. Trump will be doing some damage control today by having lunch with some of the Republican senators for the first time in a year.
Hey guys, Adam is here, so what just happened? This is massive. In a stunning turn on Capitol Hill, Trump walked into Congress expecting the usual obedience, but instead his own Republicans looked him in the eye and said, no, fundamentally shifting the balance of power in ways most people haven't begun to process. This wasn't just another day of political drama. It was a moment where the president's party openly rejected his demands, leaving political insiders scrambling to understand what they had just witnessed. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably sitting there wondering if this is just another exaggerated media narrative designed to make Trump look bad. You might be thinking that this is just the mainstream media doing what it always does, twisting facts, taking things out of context, creating drama where none actually exists. But here's the thing that makes this situation genuinely different. This isn't the media making stuff up. This isn't the Democrats playing political games. This is his own team turning on him. This is his own people publicly walking away from him on major issues.
Donald Trump's biggest fans are turning on him. Not that he cares. Yes, outspoken commentator Megyn Kelly continued her days-long tirade against the president, this time making the bold claim that the president is spiraling downward.
I don't know what he's doing, but the president is spiraling downward in his poll numbers. He is on a downward spiral now.
She then continued saying Trump's base has abandoned him because he isn't focusing on the issues that affect them, like the economy.
Because they want him to focus on the economy, on inflation, not on Iran. That's what they want. They don't give 2 shits about the Strait of Hormuz, about Karg Island, about blockades in the Middle East. They care about their pocketbooks and being able to pay their mortgages and their grocery bills and their car payment without getting that sickening feeling in their stomach.
And the kicker? The part that makes this whole situation absolutely bonkers? Trump is sitting in the White House right now realizing that his whole "I'm untouchable, I'm unstoppable, Congress does whatever I say" routine is falling apart in real time. He's watching his carefully constructed image of invincibility crumble before his eyes, and there's absolutely nothing he can do to stop it. So let's break down exactly what happened here, because the details matter. Trump went into those meetings pushing hard. He was demanding total loyalty, no questions asked, no pushback, no deviation from his agenda. This is the guy who built his entire political brand on this cult of personality. The fear factor, the "you cross me and you're done" energy that has kept Republicans in line for years. It's worked for him time and time again. It's how he got elected. It's how he's maintained control over the party. It's been his secret weapon, the thing that made him different from every other politician who came before him.
60 cents a gallon just from a short while ago. And remember this. We had to make this detour. We had to go to Iran. You can't let them blow up the Middle East and then us, if that's possible. We would have gotten them before, but they would have blown up Israel. They would have blown up the entire Middle East. You can't let that. You want to see a bad economy? That's a bad economy. So
President Trump this afternoon visiting a battleground district in Pennsylvania, one that'll help decide which party controls Congress for the rest of his second term. And the president, though, will soon return to Washington for a key meeting with Senate Republicans tomorrow. Top of the president's agenda, the SAVE Act, his bill to give the federal government greater control over how the states administer their own elections. Now, Senate Republicans say they don't have the votes to pass that, and they're warning the president in pretty stark terms that he may not get his way this time.
I think implementing standards, actually appropriating money for election audits makes sense to me, but this is a waste of time. It's a distraction, and it's not going to happen in this Congress. He's just got to understand some of the limits we have here in the Senate. Talking's good, SAVAC's a waste of time.
But this time, something was different. This time, the magic didn't work. His own Republicans started peeling away from him, and they did it publicly. They did it in meetings where everyone could see. They did it in votes that would be recorded for history. They did it in ways that made it absolutely clear that the emperor has no clothes, that the power he thought he had was never really as solid as he believed it to be. Politico is reporting that Trump's iron grip on Congress has legitimately slipped. We're not talking about opinions or analysis here. We're talking about real documentation of real pushback, real votes from Republicans breaking with him on major issues. It's creating what they're calling cracks in what was supposed to be this completely invincible power structure. The cracks are small right now, but they're growing, and everyone in Washington can see them.
Even as another cabinet member departs his administration, the president demonstrates once again his vice-like grip on Republican primary voters, while Democrats release a clumsy analysis of why they lost to Trump in the first place. So for more on the week in politics, we turn to Brooks and Capehart. That's The Atlantic's David Brooks and Jonathan Capehart of MS Now. Gentlemen, so nice to see you. Yeah. Jonathan, as I just mentioned, once again, the president, faced with two Republican thorns in his side, Thomas Massie and Bill Cassidy, the president says, I want you primary voters to chuck these two guys out and put my loyalists in their stead. And they do. They get rid of two popular local political leaders. What do you make of this ongoing ability that he has?
Well, I mean, on one hand, this is nothing new. If you pay attention to the polls, you know that, one, the president only cares about his standing among Republicans, and particularly MAGA Republicans, and two, Republicans, by and large, are still lockstep behind the president, although overall less than they were before.
But here's where it gets even more interesting. Trump isn't just dealing with Republicans who are suddenly finding their backbone. He's also dealing with his own base turning on him. His MAGA supporters, the people who showed up in droves, the people who voted for him, the people who would previously walk through fire for him, they're looking at recent policy moves and recent decisions, and they're scratching their heads. They're saying, hold up, wait a minute, where'd you go? What happened to the hardline immigration stuff? What happened to the aggression? You're compromising now? You're backing down? What happened to the fighter we thought we were getting? This is creating this really interesting tension because Trump is basically stuck. He's trapped between a Congress that won't fully cooperate with him and a base that thinks he's gone soft and weak. The more he pushes and tries to force things, the more people push back. The more he tries to dominate every fight, the more visible it becomes that he's actually not dominating anything. He's negotiating, he's compromising, he's retreating. Now, I want you to think about something really important here. Most people are looking at this situation completely wrong. They're looking at Trump and they're thinking he's at his strongest right now. He's president. He's got Congress. Republicans control the House and the Senate. Shouldn't he be running the table on everything? Shouldn't Congress just be rubber stamping whatever he wants? And the answer should be yes. You would think so, based on the traditional rules of politics. But that's just not what's happening in reality. What's actually happening is much more complicated and way more interesting for what comes next. Republicans are looking at the 2026 midterms coming up. They're looking at 2028 and the future of the party. They're reading polling data that says being too close to Trump, being too publicly loyal to him, being too aligned with all his controversial stuff, that can actually hurt them in their own districts. This is especially true if they're in swing areas. If they're worried about independent voters and suburban voters who have been trending away from Trump for years now, that trend isn't stopping, it's continuing, it's getting worse. So you've got this moment right now where Republicans are basically doing the calculation. Am I going to go down with Trump on this particular fight? Or am I going to protect my own political seat in my own future? And increasingly, the answer they're giving is that they're protecting their own seat. They're not saying it that way out loud. Usually, they're being careful about how they phrase it. They're being strategic. But the votes are showing it. The positions they're taking are showing it. The distance they're putting between themselves and Trump's more controversial talking points is showing it loud and clear to everyone paying attention. And Trump is realizing, probably for the first time since his presidency started, that you can't just bully Congress into submission when they've got their own political reasons to stand firm against you. You can't threaten them the same way when they know you're not literally going to be on the ballot in the immediate term to punish them and end their careers. That changes the math. That changes the entire power dynamic. That's a fundamental shift in how things work. Let's really break down what happened here, because most people are just looking at headlines and thinking, oh, Congress didn't pass something that Trump wanted. So what? No, that's way too simple. That's missing the actual real story underneath all of this. What happened is much bigger than that. What happened is Trump went to Congress and basically said, this is what we're doing. Full stop. No negotiation. You fall in line or you look really bad with my base. And Congress, his own Republicans, basically said, no, we're not doing this your way. That's genuinely a big deal. Let's talk about what NBC News and other major outlets are reporting on right now. Republicans are openly pushing back on Trump's agenda. They're not doing this secretly. They're not doing this quietly in private meetings behind closed doors. They're doing it out loud. They're doing it in actual votes. They're taking public positions that contradict him. And this is happening on issues ranging from immigration, which is supposed to be like the absolute third rail of MAGA politics, the core issue, the thing Trump built his entire brand on, to his inflammatory social media posts, the things that Trump uses to communicate directly to his base and fire them up. So you've got House Republicans and Senate Republicans looking at Trump's latest demands on immigration, some of the hardline stuff that he's been pushing really hard on, and they're basically going, yeah, we're not doing that, at least not the way you want it done. Trump's power on Capitol Hill is slipping not because of abstract weakness, but because the math for individual Republicans has fundamentally changed. As Trump's popularity drops with suburban and independent voters, members in swing districts are calculating that being too closely aligned with him is a liability. The calculation is shifting from vote his way for political survival to protect myself first. And Republicans are increasingly nervous about being visibly tied to Trump's most controversial positions, especially his social media attacks on other Republicans that fire up the base but drive away moderate voters. And then there's something else that's really fascinating about this whole situation. There's the blowback that's coming from Trump's own MAGA base. And this is the part that really frustrates him because his base is the one thing he actually depends on completely. His base shows up to vote. His base is incredibly loyal. His base turns out in numbers that would make any political strategist weep with joy. They're the engine that drives his entire political machine, but they're starting to feel like he's compromising. They're starting to feel like he's not as hardcore and aggressive as he promised to be. They're looking at recent policy decisions and recent policy shifts, and they're thinking, what happened to hardline immigration enforcement? What happened to the populist economic agenda? Why are you compromising with establishment Republicans? Why aren't you as extreme as you used to be? This is creating this really impossible squeeze for Trump right now. He's stuck between his base saying, go harder, be more extreme, don't back down from anyone or anything. And Congress saying, ease off, be more reasonable, work with us instead of against us. And the more he tries to navigate that impossible middle ground, the more visible it becomes that he's actually not in control of the situation. He's just reacting to it. He's responding to events instead of shaping them. Politico's analysis of this situation is telling you everything you need to know. They documented what they called a series of rebukes from Republicans on key votes and positions. Not just one or two incidents, a series, a pattern, a clear trend, and that pattern is casting what they specifically call fresh doubt on his sway and his influence in Congress. That's not opinion. That's not commentary. That's observation. That's documentation of something real and concrete happening in front of us. Now, why does this actually matter for what comes next? Well, Because Congress is where the real governance happens. Congress is where bills get written and debated and voted on. Congress is where the money gets allocated and directed. Congress is where investigations get launched or blocked depending on who has the power. Congress is where the actual work of government happens. If Trump can't control Congress the way he thinks he can control it, if his influence is slipping like we're seeing, then his entire ability to execute his agenda changes dramatically. His ability to protect himself from potential investigations changes. His ability to make his own Republicans vote the way he wants them to vote on key moments when it matters most. That changes completely. And then you've got the election angle layered on top of all this, because that's what Republicans are really thinking about every single day. 2026 is coming up soon. That's the midterm election year. Historically, midterms are absolutely brutal for the party that's in power. The president's base is less energized and motivated. Voters who didn't vote for him show up in higher numbers. Independent voters become decisive. And if you're a Republican in a purple district or a swing state, you're looking at that entire electoral map and that math and thinking, I need to differentiate myself from Trump in some ways if I want to survive this election and keep my seat. Some Republicans are openly defying Trump. And he is finding that threats and loyalty demands don't work the same way when you're not running for re-election in the immediate term. The power equation has shifted, and he's struggling to adapt. Republicans in competitive districts are doing basic political math. Voting with Trump on everything is hurting their re-election chances, because while his base is energized, they don't represent the majority in most swing districts. In a lot of competitive districts, Trump voters are actually the minority. It's independents and suburban voters and college-educated voters who actually decide who wins elections. And those voters, they don't like Trump as much as his base does. They don't trust him. They've been trending away from him. So you get this phenomenon where Republicans are basically asking themselves, can I actually survive a primary challenge from someone even more Trumpy than me if I break with him on this issue? And increasingly, they're answering that question with, you know what? Yeah, I probably can, because I would rather face a Trumpy primary challenger that I can probably beat with support from traditional Republicans and independent-leaning voters than I would face a general election where I'm too tied to Trump and I lose to a Democrat. That's the calculation shift. That's the thing that's happening right now. That's the math that's changing. Now, here's the second thing you need to understand, and this is really important. Immigration is the test case for all of this. Immigration is supposed to be the Trump issue. It's the issue where his base is most energized and fired up. It's the issue where he ran and won in 2016. It's the issue where he built his entire political brand and identity. And now, Republicans in Congress are actively pushing back on his immigration demands. They're saying his proposals are too extreme or too expensive or won't pass constitutional legal challenge or won't pass the Senate or it won't work in practice. Whatever the excuse or reason is, they're pushing back. They're resisting. They're not falling in line. And that's absolutely huge. That's a big deal because if Trump can't win on immigration, if he can't get his way on immigration, the one issue that defines him, the one issue that his base cares most about, then what issue can he actually force Congress to pass exactly the way he wants it? Maybe the answer is none of them. Maybe what this shows is that his leverage in Congress has just fundamentally changed and shifted in a way that can't be undone. Maybe this is the new reality going forward. The third thing you need to understand is that this is about his base getting frustrated and disappointed with him too. And this is the part that Trump really hates because his base, his MAGA supporters, they're the one thing he actually depends on completely. His base shows up. His base is loyal. His base turns out to vote in huge numbers. They volunteer. They donate. They do everything he asks. But they're starting to feel like he's compromising too much. They're starting to feel like he's not as hardcore and aggressive as he promises to be. They're starting to feel betrayed. And that creates this internal pressure where Trump has to stay crazy enough and extreme enough to keep his base excited and energized, but also be reasonable enough to actually govern and not lose too many Republicans in Congress. Can you actually do both of those things at the same time? Can you be radical enough for MAGA and moderate enough to govern? That's the real question. because right now, he's failing at both. His base thinks he's gotten soft and weak. Congress thinks he's too extreme and reckless, and he's stuck in the middle trying to please both groups and pleasing absolutely neither one of them. Trump's power was never about literal invincibility. It was about the image, the branding, the myth that he always wins. But you can't lose fights publicly when your whole brand is dominance. The moment the image cracks, the moment people see he's not untouchable, the calculations shift. Loyalty becomes conditional instead of absolute, and the entire foundation of his power begins to erode. Then Republicans start asking what's in it for me instead of just assuming the answer is safety from Trump's wrath. And we're in that exact moment right now. We're watching it unfold in real time. We're seeing the cracks form and spread. We're witnessing the unraveling of something that once seemed so solid and unshakable. So what comes next? Well, that depends on a lot of factors. If Trump doubles down and gets even more aggressive with Congress, that probably accelerates the cracks and the fractures. If he steps back and tries to be more reasonable and moderate, he loses his base and they get angry with him. If he tries to split the difference and be halfway extreme, he satisfies nobody. Meanwhile, 2026 is coming fast. Elections are coming, and the electoral math that's making Republicans nervous right now, that's not getting better. That's not improving. That's staying brutal. So yeah, Trump tried to force Congress to heel like a dog, and what he got instead was a public reminder that even his own party will push back when their own political survival is on the line. And that changes everything. That changes how every future fight plays out. That changes whether he can actually govern the way he promised. That changes the entire trajectory of his second term and the rest of his presidency. And honestly, that's the wildest part of all this, because nobody really saw this coming when he took office. Everyone assumed he'd already learned all the lessons from his first term. Everyone assumed he'd be stronger and more in control and more prepared. Everyone assumed he'd figured out how to avoid the mistakes that had cost him so much the first time around. Everyone assumed he'd come back with a vengeance and a plan and the experience to make it all work this time. And instead, we're watching his grip loosen in real time in Congress with his own party, while his base gets frustrated watching him compromise when they wanted him to fight harder. That's the story. That's what's happening. And where it goes from here, well, that's going to determine literally everything about American politics for the next several years. Now, I want you to really think about what this moment means. Think about the message it sends to every Republican in Congress, to every Republican strategist, to every Republican donor, to every Republican voter. The message is that Trump is not as powerful as he used to be. The message is that defying him doesn't automatically mean political death. The message is that there might be a path forward that doesn't involve kissing his ring and bending to his will. That's a dangerous message for Trump to have out there. That's a message that will spread. That's a message that will embolden others who have been quietly questioning his leadership but were too afraid to speak up. That's a message that will create more defections, more resistance, more pushback. Once the dam breaks, once the first cracks appear, the whole thing becomes vulnerable. Think about the Republicans who have been sitting on the fence. Think about the ones who have been privately expressing doubts but publicly staying silent. Think about the ones who have been waiting to see which way the wind is blowing before they make their move. They're watching this moment very carefully. They're taking notes. They're making calculations. And what they're seeing is that Trump can be defied. What they're seeing is that there might not be consequences. What they're seeing is that the emperor might actually have no clothes. And that changes everything. That changes the entire dynamic of how the party operates. That changes who gets to call the shots. That changes the balance of power in Washington. That changes the future of the Republican Party, and by extension, the future of the entire country. Let me tell you why this matters so much for ordinary Americans who might not care about the inside baseball of Washington politics. Because when a president can't control his own party in Congress, nothing gets done. Gridlock sets in. Important legislation stalls. Critical issues go unaddressed. The government becomes less functional. The people who are supposed to be solving problems get stuck in endless fights with each other instead. And that's exactly what we're looking at right now. A president who can't get his own party to fall in line. A Congress that's fracturing into competing factions. A base that's unhappy with its leadership. This is not a recipe for effective governance. This is a recipe for chaos. This is a recipe for dysfunction. This is a recipe for more of the same gridlock that has plagued Washington for years. But it's also something else. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for Republicans who want to move the party in a different direction. It's an opportunity for Republicans who think the party has become too focused on one man and not focused enough on policy and governance. It's an opportunity for Republicans who believe the party needs to expand its appeal beyond the MAGA base if it wants to win elections in the future. The question is whether they'll actually take that opportunity. Whether they'll actually stand up and do something with the opening that's been created, whether they'll actually seize the moment and start building something new instead of just reacting to Trump's latest move. History is full of moments like this, moments where the old order crumbles and something new emerges from the rubble. The question is whether this is one of those moments. And that brings us back to where we started. Trump walked into Congress thinking he was still in total control. He pushed hard, he demanded loyalty, he expected his own Republicans to just fall in line and do whatever he said, and what he got was a rude awakening. What he got was a public embarrassment. What he got was a reminder that power is never permanent, that loyalty is never absolute, that even the most dominant figure can be defied when the circumstances are right. This is the moment that everyone in Washington is talking about. This is the moment that political insiders are analyzing and reanalyzing. This is the moment that could shape the future of American politics for years to come. And it's happening right now, in front of our eyes, in real time. It's happening while you're reading these words. It's happening while the rest of the country goes about its daily business, completely unaware that the power structure in Washington is shifting beneath their feet. So here's what you need to remember. Trump tried to force Congress to do his bidding. He tried to use the same tactics that have worked for him in the past. He tried to intimidate and bully and threaten his way to victory. And it didn't work. His own Republicans pushed back. His own base got frustrated. His own power structure started to crack. And that's the story. That's what happened. That's what's happening right now. That's what's going to continue to happen as more Republicans realize that they don't have to be afraid anymore. As more Republicans realize that there might be a path forward that doesn't involve total submission to Trump's will. As more Republicans realize that the emperor's clothes are actually pretty threadbare. The moment when Trump walked into Congress expecting total obedience and instead got total defiance, with Republicans standing up to him, the base questioning if their champion has gone soft, and cracks in his power structure becoming visible, marks a fundamental shift in American politics. The old rules don't apply anymore. Everything is in flux, and whether Trump reasserts control or his grip is gone for good will determine the future of the Republican Party, the 2026 and 2028 elections, and the country itself.